This week on Quality Digest Live, we look at how cognitive dissonance affects quality.
Cognitive dissonance?
Dissonance. Didn't I say that properly?
Yeah, that's like two three-syllable words in a row.
It's hard, I know, and I think I wrote it too.
Which shows really taking it to the next level.
Good cognition.
Yeah, plus, ISO 9000 makes good business sense. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for March 22nd, 2013. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme.
And Dirk, I know you're going to cover a news item.
Okay.
In about 5 seconds.
Right.
But before we do that, I want to remind you all, because we don't remind everyone of this enough.
This is actually a live show.
It's a live show. Yeah. Where it is exactly 11:02 a.m. Pacific time right now. 2:02 p.m. Eastern,
right?
And various other times around the world. You can write us right now at qdl@qualitydigest.com. If there's anything on the show that we're going to cover, we're going to be on with you for the next half an hour, whether you like it or not. We're going to be on with you for half an hour. So if you have a comment on something we're going to cover, just write us. Drop us a quick line. Our control booth right over there is going to get it to us, and we'll answer your question live on the air. So let us know what you're thinking, and we'll respond to you in real time.
That's right.
Okay, so go ahead, Dirk.
Okay. How many of you have supply chains that include suppliers from overseas, perhaps in countries that typically have poor child labor or health and safety standards? Well, there is an interesting and useful article we ran this week, Holding Sweatshops Accountable by Sunil Sinha and Wally Bell. Now, if you look at this slide right here, you can see that the percentages of various types of labor violations in countries as monitored by the Fair Labor Association is fairly high. And this slide you're seeing, this is according to the Fair Labor Association's 2010 report. Now, if you look at these, you can see several things here. You can see health and safety in particular. Those violations tend to be quite high, about 95%.
That's the one right in the middle, kind of about 4 or 5 over.
Yes, about exactly. You probably can't read the text there, but about 95% of those of the companies that are monitored by the Fair Labor Association have some sort of health and safety violations, and there's child labor violations and various other types of violations. Now, these percentages actually have improved over the years, but there's a lot of reasons why suppliers might break labor laws, and the article lists a few of them, one of which, of course, is unreasonable cost and delivery demands from buyers, which would be us, let's say, in the United States, which sets the stage for taking shortcuts. So, for instance, you're an overseas supplier, you're in India, you're in China, you're in Philippines, wherever, and you have somebody come to you, from a Western country and say, we need 100,000 units, we need them in 6 weeks, and we want this price for it. Now, or we're going to take our business elsewhere. Well, that is particularly in countries that don't have a lot of oversight into these things. That really sets the stage for taking shortcuts. Yes. And know their meet to demands and not lose your business. You may work people to overtime and not pay them. You may abuse your child labor. And as interesting as that is, I think the important part of this article was actually the discussion of switching from let's say, a pure policing method of ensuring fair labor practices, audits and so forth, and instead making sure that suppliers are involved in the solution and not just being told what to do. Because obviously, when you're talking something that's on a global level, you can't adequately police every single factory in every single country, and policing doesn't work because when the police's backs are turned, well, then things can happen. So really what you want is suppliers that are actually in on it. You want them to be part of the whole solution. So, excuse me, Sinha and Bell give several suggestions. One of them is that suppliers or vendors manage their own compliance programs. And the benefits of a strong vendor-owned compliance program would be minimizes disruption from the business from, let's say, continual audits, minimizes regulatory compliance risk, reduces the cost, creates desirable working conditions by focusing on human resource improvements that reduce staff turnover. That's a big one. Leads to better productivity through better employee well-being. Creates a competitive edge in a competitive environment. Now, obviously, you still need some policing done maybe on more on a sampling basis, but really this is an overall a better approach. I mean, if you're going to really improve worker standards across the world, the suppliers themselves have to be involved in the process and have to see the value of the process, which as mentioned in one of those points, really is, in the long run, helps the bottom line. And that is the main reason why you want to comply to anything. Compliance just for the sake of compliance doesn't buy you anything. Right. If by complying, you're improving your bottom line, that is really what you want. Now, obviously, in order for this to work, and the authors make this point, as does the Fair Labor Association, everybody, at least the big suppliers, all have to do it. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. I mean, if you have one supplier that's playing by the rules and the rest aren't, then the playing field is not level, and they're going to lose business to the suppliers who aren't playing fair. So
exactly.
Yeah, so take a look at this article. The link is on the bottom of the player page. A very interesting article, touches on a lot of interesting points, so good stuff.
Yeah, check that out. Okay, another news item that we covered this week comes to us from the American Productivity and Quality Center, also known as the APQC, which is a leading worldwide researcher and proponent of benchmarking, best practices, and knowledge management. The APQC recently unveiled a new survey titled Effective Project Management Offices, or PMO. The report looked at best-in-class organizations to determine how they achieve maximum value from the management of their portfolio of projects. So companies that participated in the survey included Dell, IBM, DTT Energy, and several others. So overall, 14 discrete best practices for outstanding PMO were identified. Of those four of them really stood out for the compilers of the study, and let's take a look at them. The first one was active contribution to enterprise strategic planning. In other words, the survey identified top management support, often very hands-on support, as a major factor in PMO success. Second one, strategic and integrated approach to resource forecasting and loading. In other words, project managers very often work on a lot of projects at once, and this is an imperative to keep everyone organized and moving forward, and that ability to do that is a real differentiator between the great organizations and just the merely good ones in PMO. Third, large investments in training of the project managers. So much of the cost of this, as you'll see, is in so-called soft skills, training that focuses on coaching and one-on-one mentoring from senior level project managers to their less experienced colleagues. And the fourth and final one, automation and centralization in the use of PMO technologies. In other words, a reliance on cutting-edge software tools was noted, whether it's in-house or brought in from a vendor, as another key differentiator between those that really do PMO well, really manage their projects well, and those that just don't do it quite as well. So interesting stuff there. The full research report is now available from APQC, and it can be accessed through the story link for this news item, which appears, as Dirk mentioned, right below the player page. Right down there, you can check out all the stories we're going to be covering on the show down there today.
All right. Also, a lot of you may be interested. EASTEC is looming over the horizon. The largest manufacturing and exposition conference in the Northeast, sponsored by SME. EASTEC will feature new conference tracks this year focused on continuous improvement, advanced manufacturing, and workforce development. Specific sessions include lean manufacturing, visual management, advanced CAM tools, strategic management of an automated environment, applications of reverse engineering, light scanning for metrology, and addressing the skills gap through collaboration. So this is a big show. There's going to be more than 500 exhibitors, and there's a lot to see and do there if you've never been to EASTEC or WestTech. They're great shows to go to. The event layout is organized in 5 exhibit categories depending on your interests. So you've got design, engineering, and rapid technologies, tool working, work holding, and machining accessories, automation, quality, and process improvement, plant energy and environmental efficiency, and precision manufacturing equipment and systems. So that's EASTEC 2013, May 14th through 16th at Eastern States Exposition in West Springfield, Massachusetts.
That's right. Beautiful time to be in the Northeast, by the way. May is not always a nice time to be in the Northeast. You don't want to be there necessarily in February. But May, it should be really nice. Nice chance to get out there. Okay. Finally, this week in the news, we want to offer a big shout out to one of our longtime columnists and contributors, Bill Kalmar, who is turning 70 years of age
Yeah.
on March 30th. Now, if I know Bill, if you know Bill, he's probably going to be running a marathon on his birthday to celebrate. But Bill, healthy guy, great guy, always contributes interesting thoughts to our newsletter.
Yeah, and it's funny talking about. He runs 5Ks all the time, and it's funny because obviously he's in the seniors class, and he says, as he gets older and runs these races more, he just has less competition.
Yeah.
So it's kind of he figures one of these days he'll win.
He's moving up to a whole new class.
It's kind of attrition.
70s, that's right.
You live long enough, you'll win that race.
So happy birthday, Bill! Congrats on your 70th coming up next week, and keep writing for us, buddy. We love it.
Okay, one of our new features this week is a new column called Bull Wranglers. And the Bull Wranglers are Anthony Burns and Michael McLean from Australia. These guys are a couple of cantankerous folks who really take issue with a lot of what's going on and considered best practice in continuous improvement in the workforce today. They think there's a lot of stuff going on that really is wrong. And many of you are probably familiar with Anthony Burns. He's very critical of Six Sigma. And this article is the beginning of kind of setting up a whole set of features that'll be coming in the future. But one of the things he did in this article is set up the idea of why we are so reluctant to question the things that we hold near and dear to our heart. And he's speaking specifically within, let's say, the quality arena, what we're doing with continuous improvement. Do we embrace Six Sigma? Do we embrace some other management practice or continuous improvement practice, which maybe, in his opinion, doesn't stand up under really strict scrutiny? And in this article, he lists a lot of items, which a lot of reasons why we believe what we believe, and whether this is personal beliefs or business beliefs, why do we believe what we believe? And he lists a number of things here. I think there's 8 of them. We'll just throw them up here on the screen real quick. There's the Ash effect. We'll get to that real quick. Fraud. We can be defrauded. Charismatic leaders. The placebo effect. Ignorance. Intuition. Consensus. All of these lead us to believe certain things that may not hold up if we allow ourselves to question them. And I just wanted to go through some of these items that he pointed out. I've got the list here in front of me. So he's talked about this before. The first one was the Ash effect. And think of the Ash effect as more like groupthink. And particularly within a business environment, we're surrounded by other managers or other workers who believe a certain thing. This is what works for continuous improvement, or this is the best management practice, or whatever. And we don't question it because we all talk about it, we all believe it. And so groupthink takes over, and regardless of whether it's true or not, we just go, oh, well, it must be true because, well, that guy believes it, and I talked to CEO over that company, and he believes it. Yeah. So this must be the right way to do things. And sometimes we don't actually stand back and say, does this really make sense? Really, should we be doing that? So the Ash effect is groupthink. Sometimes we actually fall victim, even in the business world, to fraud, where somebody will say something is a certain way, maybe it's a consultant, maybe something else, and we believe it without really questioning what is their motivation. He gives a good example. This isn't in the business realm, but he gives a good example of where the entire world, practically, the entire Western world, fell victim to fraud, and that was in the idea that was held to be true for quite a while, that immunization against mumps, measles, and rubella, there's a correlation between those inoculations and autism. Was really held, scared a lot of people for a long time, even though the doctor who created that study, his theories were totally debunked, found out he was actually cooking the books, was paid by lawyers who were, it's a longer story, but was paid by lawyers, and eventually he lost his medical license, and yet that study that was released in Lancet, which is like the premier medical journal in the UK, and by the way, study came out of a high-end hospital in the UK, was held to be a valid study, and actually it turned out to be completely fraudulent. And everybody bought into it.
And how many kids didn't get their shots because of it?
And how many kids didn't get their shots because of it? This takes place, Burns would say, Burns and McLean would say, in the business world as well. Where for whatever reason, somebody puts out an idea, hypes it, advertises it, it gets out there, we buy it, and then we follow through on it, and we never stop and really question. And this is a problem of, particularly when something comes from what we consider to be a reliable source. And a reliable source might be a big company. Well, if GE is doing it, or if Chrysler is doing it, or if GM's doing it, or whatever, well, those big companies, they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't real, right?
Sure. And well, the problem is, as we think about a lot, is this idea of the marketplace of ideas. We have a marketplace of ideas here in this country, and anybody can contribute an idea to that marketplace. We have the internet now. You can contribute an idea, and that idea can gain currency in news. And you can point to almost any source to prove anything now. And how does a person with an open mind understand what the truth is? Truth can be variable, or can appear to be variable. This is the issue that they're talking about here.
Right.
How do you know? And I think what Burns and McLean are saying is, you know through the data. You know through looking at the data objectively and understanding what that data means in terms of operations, in this case industrial operations for an organization. Right? It's the only way you can do it.
Right.
But the mindset, you need the right mindset to do that.
You have to be willing, and this is actually Burns and McLean's thrust in this article, is that you have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone. You have to be willing to listen to arguments that are contrary to your belief system, whether it's Burns's comments or anybody else.
Right.
You have to be willing to look at them. Now, you may end up still agreeing. You may still thinking that you're on the right track.
Yeah.
But unless you question it, you're not going to know.
So you made a great point before we went on, this idea that through the questioning of it, through the really rigorous questioning of a held belief system, if you reconfirm that belief system, then you know you're really onto something.
And I think, I like that. And we just have a few minutes to wrap this up. But I think anytime somebody challenges you, you don't want to just dismiss it. You want to listen to their arguments. You want, even if you formulate it in your own head, you want to formulate your own arguments. Because in that formulation of, well, how would I counter what this person is saying, you start organizing your thoughts. And sometimes, and I've had it happen to me, all of a sudden you realize your argument maybe isn't quite as strong as you thought, because you've never bothered trying to put together your argument to begin with.
Right.
And all of a sudden you find weaknesses in your own argument. And you may either find a way to buttress your own argument, or you may just decide, and this has happened to me, that, you know what, maybe I was wrong.
Maybe I was wrong.
And you don't know that unless you actually start to question it. So that's actually the whole thrust of this article.
And then the mindset, not to put too fine a point on, the mindset of a quality professional, quality manager in industry or service, whatever it may be, is that you need to have that open mindset. I mean, you have to be able to look at whatever you're doing, your process, and not have a dearly held sacred cow belief that you're going to say, well, it's got to be this. My gut tells me this. That's very contrary to what we all should be doing for a living here. Right. So I think what Burns and McLean are saying here is really valuable, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. The perspective of look at the data, question it, have an open mind is, I think, really valuable. Yeah. They're going to, I'm sure, be talking more about Six Sigma in upcoming columns.
Try to steer them in some other directions, but okay.
But good stuff. I mean,
there's a link to it below the player page. Link out there, and you can take a look.
Check it out. You'll be seeing the Bull Wranglers coming up in
another couple months. Yeah.
So you'll be seeing that later. Okay. Going to turn to another article now. Also, kind of in the perception versus reality realm. I think kind of a little bit of the theme of the show this week is perception versus reality. This comes to us from Oscar Combs. Oscar's article titled "ISO 9001 as a Business Management Tool." Oscar Combs, that appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Well, what Oscar's talking about in this article is how you use ISO 9001 and other quality management system standards, and why you use them, and how a business can get the most value out of it. And I think what happens many times is that and I've done this, people can sometimes confuse a tactical imperative with a strategic imperative. In other words, what I mean by that is ISO 9001 properly implemented will strategically hit every lever of improvement for a company. It will hit the financial improvements, it will hit the customer service improvements and the requirements. It will do everything if you approach it properly from a process perspective. We'll do all that strategically. But that's not why people get into it many times. People that approach ISO 9001 oftentimes approach it tactically. They say, well, we have a specific problem, a specific error that we need to correct, or more likely than that even is they'll say, well, we have a customer that wants it. Yeah,
this is still the truth, even though we said that's not really your reason should be your reason for doing it.
It shouldn't be, but it is in many cases. But even that's okay, though. I mean, even if you get into ISO 9001 for the wrong reason, there's really no wrong reason, let's be honest. But if you get into it from a tactical perspective to address a particular problem or service a particular customer, you can get a lot of benefit out of it if you have your own mindset, like Burns and McClay were just referring to. You have your own mindset properly tuned to the fact that you can adjust this to a strategic imperative. And what do I mean by that? What does Oscar mean by that? Well, you're trying to look at your organization from a process perspective. Again, you're trying to look at it at a few different things. You're trying to understand the requirements of your business and the requirements of your customers, right? You're trying to create value, you're trying to obtain results, and you're trying to achieve continual improvement. And you can do all those things, again, if you look at the standard and you peel back the layers of the standard and apply those processes to what you're doing. It doesn't even matter what you're doing. It does not matter what you're doing. But management has to be the ones that have to lead this. They have to get involved, and they have to be the ones that are willing to kind of impart that change to the organization. Right. I was going to say force that change, but managers need to lead it, and we know that managers need to lead that. And again, it needs to be strategic. It's got to be looking at everything the organization is doing, because ultimately it's about customers. See, customer requirements are the key framework. It's the key edifice upon which all this is built. And you know, it's challenging sometimes because there's still a lot of resistance to this idea. There's still a lot of people in organizations that are ISO 9001 registered who don't buy in. Now, we had a reader, and I want to actually show a slide now from a reader. Blanche DM was the reader's name. I assume that's female, she, Blanche. And she wrote in, and this is a really good point. She wrote in, she said, I know a fair number of people, none in the quality roles, obviously, who sort of sneer at the ISO 9001 process in general because they view it as a system in which companies can set their own rules, and as long as they follow those rules, they fulfill their obligations and satisfy auditors. Any advice on how to answer the doubters? Well, you know, I actually...
She is actually partly true.
She's right.
But that's not the way to use it.
That's not the way to use it. But that,
right.
Again, it's tactics versus strategies.
Right.
Tactically, sure, you can use it that way. You can set it up. You can move the goalposts so that you can succeed if you want. But my answer to her was, I jumped in there when I saw that because I'm like, you know, that's a really good point. Demands an answer. So I jumped in there and I wrote and I said, well, you know, a couple of things. One, I think that there is such a thing as a cultural language of improvement in an organization. You need to start somewhere. However you define it, you need to have your organization come together and understand what the common language of quality is that you're going to talk about. And I think ISO 9001, ISO standards are a fine way to do that. And also, I think, again, what we were talking about here is you don't get registered to an ISO standard to put the certification on the wall to say that you did it for a customer or for that marketing perspective. You know, you need to have more to it than that. You need to understand that it's going to improve your organization if you do it right, from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. One of the things that I threw out there, which I think is important, is I think somebody who's a real doubter of this, to me, there is an unexpressed fear. There's a resistance there that you have to get to. If you're going to try to be, if you're going to try to address quality in ISO 9001 in your organization, you need to do what Deming said is drive that fear. And you need to understand people might be resistant to change. Oscar responded to this too, and he really referred to the fact that you know, there's kind of the intent of the standard really has changed, and maybe there were people who had experienced ISO 9001 in the past who looked at it as being very rigid, very tactical again. But again, it's very strategic, and you can, you know, it's different now. It can be done now differently than it was in the past. And you know, ISO 9001 improves the organization in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of hard key performance indicators you can point to that it improves. So that's a way to convince those doubters as well. Anyway, there's a lot here. This is something we talk about a lot, is how you talk to your organization and do something like ISO 9001, bring it into your organization and make those improvements. I'd recommend that you all read the article if you haven't. Again, it's ISO 9001 as a business management tool. It's by Oscar Coombs. Again, you can find it right below the player page right down there. Check it out, read it, comment. There's some good comments going on the page right now, and we encourage all of you to register for our site if you haven't already and join the conversation about that. Yeah,
I mean, I think in general, you know, any continuous improvement, it all has to be understood that the overall goal is for the betterment of the company and not just to make sales or whatever, regardless of what it is. So
for addressing customer requirements,
exactly.
And that will be the betterment of the company. That's the strategic imperative I'm talking about really.
Okay, well, we're about ready to wrap up our show. A couple more items here. Our next Gauging Quality, this will be our third one, is on April 4th. This is going to be on
Air gauging.
Air gauging, exactly. So join Craig Howell and I on April 4th at 11 a.m. Pacific, and you'll be getting an email on this. We're going to talk about air gauging, and actually not just air gauging, but how you measure certain types of parts. So maybe the inside diameter of a hole. There's many ways to measure that. You can use an inside mic, you can use a plug gauge, you can use an air gauge, and we're going to discuss all these various methods of making some dimensional measurements, comparing them to maybe your typical handheld tools that you use, and comparing them to making the same type of measurements using an air gauge. So you want to tune in for that. It'll be very interesting and informative. Craig is quite a smart guy, and he will kind of outline all that information very clearly for you, I hope.
Well, Dirk,
and I'll stand there and look like I know what I'm talking about.
You're no slouch yourself, Dirk. You're a tremendous slouch. You'll be there with Craig, and
I'll ask all the dumb questions. So.
So April 4th. Again, check that out. Right. Our normal time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and you'll be getting emails about how to access that. Okay, well, we have a great week for you next week. We're actually on the show next week. We have Harry Hertz with us.
Harry Hertz, Baldridge, yep.
And
Harry's retiring.
Harry's retiring, and we're looking for a replacement. They're looking for a replacement. So if you're interested in working with Baldridge, maybe it would be an opportunity to check out the show. We also have a good tech corner next week with Mark 10.
That's right.
Force tester, I believe it is.
Yes.
Yes. So that's going to be a good demo there as well. So look forward to all that next week, and another great week of Quality Digest Daily. Before we let you go, we did something special, I think, this week.
Yeah, it was fun.
We did it actually a few weeks ago with our friend and our associate Mike Micklewright, lean trainer Mike Micklewright. We did a homage to the late great Paul Harvey and his well-known "So God Made a Farmer" comments, which he delivered a few decades back. And then, of course, it was on the Super Bowl, as many people know, a commercial on the Super Bowl about that. So we did that, and we did that as an honor to all of you out there, the quality managers of the world. We did a video called "So God Made a Quality Manager," and Mike did a good, very inspiring reading of that. So we're going to play that for you at the end of the show here, a couple minutes long. Check it out, and you can also find it on our website and on our YouTube page as well. So check that out. We'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.
And on the 9th day, God looked down at the flourishing workshops and factories on the good earth and said, "These enterprises need a caretaker." So God made a quality manager. God said, "I need someone willing to get up at dawn and work until sunset, understand the line worker and interpret for the CEO, eliminate waste and drive out fear, and ask why. So God made a quality manager. God said, "I need someone with a mind keen enough to see processes as they really are, a soul brave enough to challenge the process flaws, and a heart big enough to make the needed changes while calming the human resistance to change. Someone to visit cantankerous customers, tame cantankerous machinery, and reason with cantankerous auditors." So God made a quality manager. God said, "I need someone willing to stay up night after night, preparing for the big audit, suffer as the auditor identifies nonconformances, accept the blame from management, and persist until discovering the root causes of the broken processes. And once those causes are identified, fixed, verified, and validated, I need someone who is willing to celebrate the resulting successful certification quietly and alone, because management is as slow to praise as it is quick to fault." So God made a quality manager. God said, "I need someone who, with little support from operations, can form a Kaizen team and perform a Gemba walk. Someone with skin thick enough to withstand anonymous criticism and outright deceit, who accepts the slings and arrows of those who rarely listen and don't understand when they do, and who knows that corrective actions are opportunities for excellence, not excuses for blame. I need someone who understands that continuous improvement isn't a short-term fix or a flavor of the month." So God made a quality manager. God said, "I need someone with a broad perspective, wide vision, and a healthy sense of camaraderie with colleagues both in and out of the organization. Someone who, after more than a full day's work in a factory or at the site, is willing to accept the responsibility as chairperson of the local ASQ section, and who can craft engaging articles for professional journals, all for the sheer joy of expanding knowledge and promoting quality. I need someone who accepts that benchmarking is a two-way street, and that exchanging information is an opportunity as opposed to a threat. So God made a quality manager. God said, I need someone who can function as the glue of the organization, even though no one acknowledges that fact. Someone who would laugh, and then sigh, and then reply with smiling eyes when well-prepared young assistants say they want to spend their lives doing what their mentor does. So God made a quality manager.